how many people in the mainstream media piled on. Months later, there was the photographic and video evidence proving his innocence. President Xi lands in Moscow to meet with Putin, and Ted Lasso meets with Biden. The contrast couldn't be clearer.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I write a book about fake news, and Amazon's got a problem. If you work at the Washington Post or CNN, there's a value for reading it as well.
Sean Spicer is one of our favorite former White House press secretaries. And we've had him on the show several times. He now hosts Spicer and Company on Newsmax TV every weeknight. He's written 4 books, and the latest is this one that even Trey can read. It's called The Parents Go Bananas. It's a children's book, and it's in stores now and at Amazon, though you might not have known it since Amazon tried to suppress this book. But it didn't work. Please welcome back to the show, Sean Spicer. So you get a children's book out, and Amazon, they don't think they ought to let people know about it.
Well,
What's up?
I realized that the Washington Post and the Amazon are connected. You accuse them of fake news a few times, and you write a book about fake news, and maybe that has something to do with it. But luckily, bravebooks.com is where you can always go to get it. It was funny. As you said, I'm trying to keep up with you. I think you're at like 42 books. But we got ready for pre-sales, and I said, the book's not up.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we're checking on it. And then launch day was March 1st. And I said, hey, the book's not up. Now, Brave Books has launched hundreds of books. And they said, we've never seen this before. So we started inquiring. We started reaching out to some influencers. And sure enough, after the 7th day, they finally magically appeared. But they've been doing this forever. They've had hundreds of books published. It's never been a problem. This is my 4th book. The first 3 didn't have a problem. Suddenly, I write a book about fake news, and Amazon's got a problem putting it up.
I mean, this is a children's book, but it does have an important, real story.
It's a children's book, but it's also, if you work at the Washington Post or CNN, there's a value for reading it as well. Just
because it is about how rumors and lies, misinformation gets started.
Sure. So, I mean, there's 2 things. One is, and I have 2 12-year-old kids, and so they helped write about this and talk to me about their experiences. And so in the book, the 2 main characters are accused of something false. That's something a lot of kids can relate to. But more importantly, there's a lot of times when kids are urged to jump on the bandwagon, right? And I think that's something that a lot of kids are familiar with, where they're urged to be part of, everybody's saying that so-and-so did it. And that's what happens in the book. And suddenly at the end, the 2 main characters are exonerated, and they come to the rest of the crowd and say, look, we're good, upstanding citizens of Mushroom Village.
Yeah.
Why would you have accused us of this? Why did you think we would do this bad thing? And hopefully we teach kids through this book that, why would you do this? Assume the good in people. Assume that, that they've done the right thing, that the good people do good things. And so starting young, allowing parents to read this to their kids if they're older and they can read it to themselves. There's exercises in the back they can do. But we've got to start young. I think of, Nick Sandman, who was part of that Covington Catholic group of kids that was at the base of the Lincoln Monument that were falsely accused. And how many people in the mainstream media piled on, and now forever this kid is going to be, in the look on the internet, and they're going to look and say, okay, well, he was guilty until proven innocent. And then lo and behold, months later, there was the photographic and video evidence proving his innocence.
But the good thing was he sued them.
He did.
And he won. And he doggone may own half of CNN now, which we hope he does. But it shouldn't be that way. No,
it shouldn't. And that's the beauty of what Brave Books is doing, is they're once a month, they're putting out a book that's Christian, that's patriotic, and so many kids are facing forces from the internet and from society that you have to look over your shoulder as a parent and say, what are you getting? What are you reading? What are you learning at school? And they now have content that you can say, go read this. I'll read it to you. And I'm not going to have to answer a million questions about your body type or some woke agenda. that I'm not prepared to get into at this age.
And I think that's really what's great about the book. As you say, it's a children's book. Any child can understand it and enjoy it and be entertained by it. But there's a message behind it all. Speaking of messages, the White House this week has had an interesting message. There are so many things going on. Russia and China getting together, having a big group hug. We have border crisis happening. There's all sorts of issues with fentanyl killing 100,000 Americans. But the White House this week had the cast of Ted Lasso, an Apple TV series, come, and that was their big story of the day.
Yeah, President Xi lands in Moscow to meet with Putin, and Ted Lasso meets with Biden. The contrast couldn't be clearer.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what's happening in this country. You've got Russia invading Ukraine, fentanyl pouring over our border, China being provocative in the South China Sea, Iran shooting off a missile, killing a U.S. citizen, right, just in the last 24 hours, and they're meeting with Ted Lasso.
If you had a press conference and brought the cast of Ted Lasso into the White House in the midst of that, do you think they would have said, oh, this is just wonderful, Sean, thank you so much for bringing this little bit of entertainment to us?
Absolutely. But think about what happened this weekend. You had a reporter this week who, I don't excuse the behavior of this reporter by any means, jump up and down and ask a question, right? And the entire press corps, and this is literally issued an apology.
Yeah.
Think about the number of reporters, whether it was me or Sarah, that were applauded for going after and acting like hyenas, jumping up and down, and then got cable contracts for it.
Absolutely.
They were rewarded for bad behavior. There is such a dichotomy in terms of how the press behaves now versus then. It's amazing.
Well, it's disturbing because there's such a double standard. We see it in the press, but we also see it in the courts. And I want to get to this. President Trump, we don't know if he's actually going to be indicted by this New York court, but every agency has said there's nothing there. The Federal Election Commission, the federal prosecutors, the Mueller Commission. You had this guy's predecessor, Cyrus Vance, the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. They all walked away from it. This guy is seeming intent on charging Donald Trump with a crime.
Look, no matter how much you might detest Donald Trump, the charge that he's being brought up on potentially is a bookkeeping charge. The statute of limitations in New York is 2 years. This happened in 2016. So now I went to a liberal arts college, so I can still do that math. 2016 plus 2 is 2018. If you actually were able to make that a felony in New York, that's 5 years. 2016 plus 5, I can still do that one. That's 2021. We're still outside the statute of limitations, even if it's a felony. So the idea that we're having this discussion defies the limits that our justice system puts on it. And I think that no matter how much you might hate him, detest him, you have to say, is this really what our justice system is about? I remember during the 2016 campaign when there was talk of going after Hillary Clinton, them saying, I can't believe that President Trump would dare weaponize the justice system to go after his political enemies. And now they're literally sitting there saying, well, we don't care about the statute of limitations. It's in pursuit of this greater good, which is to get Donald Trump. So it's fine.
It's a double standard, if there ever was one. Sean, I hope the book is a huge success, despite Amazon's best intention.
I couldn't be governor after leaving the White House, so I figured I'd write a children's book.
Write a children's book, yeah. I have a feeling Sarah would probably say to you, good choice, Sean, good choice.
Well, so far she's doing a great job.
Oh, she's on fire.
Yeah.
For our audience, Sean's book, The Parents Go Bananas, is out now, and you can get your own copy when you head over to Huckabee.tv. We have all the links to also follow Sean on social media as well as on Newsmax. And by the way, Newsmax is back on AT&T and DirecTV. They won that battle, and we're happy about that.